Welcome back to Ascend Legal 101. If you're ready to create high-functioning, high-performing, diverse, and inclusive dream teams that benefit from increased morale, productivity, and maximized collaborations, then today's guest is someone you're going to want to meet. Leslie Rochelle, first and foremost, has her family at heart and believes in family first. In addition to being a wife and mother, she's a leadership coach, mentor, international best-selling author, site-based advisor for one of Canada's largest energy companies, and the founder of Leslie Rochelle Coaching and Consulting. Leslie has a passion for people and encouraging growth, whether that be with career development, supporting others through challenges, developing high-performing teams, or mentoring individuals on how to get closer to their personal goals. Her coaching style includes a combination of leadership and organizational coaching, life coaching, and personal development, beautifully sprinkled with aspects of spirituality. Leslie's belief is that leadership is not a title, it's a way of being. Great leadership starts within, and its foundation is understanding who we are. Uncovering our true selves and setting ego aside allows us to thrive in any environment. Please help me welcome Leslie Rochelle. Thank you for joining us again today at Ascend Legal 101. I'm Ramona, and today I'm joined by Leslie Rochelle, who is a leadership coach. Thank you for joining me today, Leslie.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's start with maybe a little bit of background. So you're a leadership coach, and we'll move into focus on your business, but what's your background? What brought you to leadership coaching?
What brought me to that was really my own experiences in becoming a leader into the higher leadership roles. And, I had started off with a company who I still happily work for. It's a great company to work for. And I was given an opportunity to step into a larger leadership role, which I never thought was even a possibility. And with 24 hours to decide, I said, sure. I mean, what do I have to lose, right? Going into that space, little did I know it would challenge and test me like nothing else ever had, I think, in my life, in my professional career. So why I had actually started that coaching piece is because I, in the search for that elusive, how do I marry the personal development with that leadership coaching aspect? I didn't actually find it, so I just created one for myself because I know that there's other new and emerging leaders that could definitely use the support to pass through those phases a little bit quicker and less maybe traumatically.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So what industry are you in, sort of aside from your coaching practice?
I'm in the energy industry. So I'm working for one of Canada's largest oil companies.
And so the structure is, I would imagine, super duper corporate, right? And can you tell me a little bit about the size and the culture?
It's quite a large company, incredibly male dominated for sure, based off just the industry that it actually is. I work at one of the field sites that we have. And that comes to operations and maintenance. And I specifically work within the maintenance group in the planning and scheduling department.
And so do you have this is sort of a separate question just because it's super interesting to me. Do you have sort of a separate safety manager? And is that rolled into the whole management team? Do you have a full safety management plan for the whole organization, or is it by department?
No, it's for the whole organization. We have a philosophy of if you can't work safe, you can't work here. So it is one of the core fundamental primary values that we have. We want to send people home the way they came or better, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect. It's just really interesting to me because my exposure is mostly small kind of operations compared to the company that you work for.
Mhm.
And I'm always interested to see how safety management works, especially for women in a male-dominated corporate culture, because women sometimes don't speak up, right?
That is true. And sometimes that really just comes down to fear, fear of a judgment. What are other people going to, what are other people going to think or going to say? So I think that's basically what it comes down to. And, at the beginning of my career, I was the only woman in the room, right? I was one of the only, I think I was the first leader of in that coordinator role at the site. And so often I was the only woman in the room. And until you figure out who you are and what is your authentic leadership style, it can be incredibly difficult to try and fit in. But the whole purpose is not to really fit into what their norm is, to bring all of yourself to the table.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me about your business now, your own coaching business, and what's the focus? And
so what I again, what I had mentioned before of the reason that I created this is to support those new and emerging leaders, and my focus is really on that team development side of things. So helping people create their dream teams, and we do focus a lot on the leader themselves, because a team's function or success or not is always, it always starts and ends with the leader themselves. So we dig into the leader more than we do the team themselves, just to identify, where is the leader at? What do they want? How is their team? How is their team set up? Are they diverse and inclusive? What is their performance like? Those types of things. And we really dig into all the aspects to find out where they can improve upon to get that more cohesive, collaborative, high-performing, high-functioning team.
And so when is your client usually the leader, or is your client sometimes the corporation looking to build leaders?
At this point in time, it's the actual individual themselves seeking that extra development to, I guess, to be the best version of themselves coming in. There are going to be corporations that are going to have that tactical leadership training, because I think a lot of us have taken those things, but they don't really go into that foundational piece, which is understanding who we really are, and finding that authentic leader within us, because once we find that, you'll be unstoppable.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
So just really quickly, because I'd like to circle back here and relate some of this experience. You have contributed to 2 books, and I've read them, as you can see.
I love it.
And these are the high points I'd like to hit today. No,
for sure.
The first is, I think, in Obstacles Equal Opportunities, Volume 2, and I will leave a link, excuse me, in the description below if anybody wants a copy. You talk about some sort of very informative events that I think are sort of an every woman's event. And you talk about frying pan moments, and we've all had, unfortunately, probably more than our fair share of frying pan moments. So maybe you can just give me a overview version of this story, and what was the shift for you? Not necessarily the frying pan moment, but what was the thing that made you shift your mindset and then so that you had the ability to move forward?
For sure. So this particular story ended up being, I guess the beginning of the story was the end of a relationship. And I guess that's the beginning of a lot of things. Is I didn't know who I was. By the time I ended that relationship, I put so much into it that I'd forgotten about me, and I had no idea what I liked, what I wanted to do, what are the goals that I actually have. So when that relationship ended, it left me going, who is this person staring back at me in the mirror? I don't know who she is. And, it was that process of going through the different aspects of trying to figure out who I was, going through the unfortunate dating marathon, thinking, I'm never going to meet anybody sitting in my basement. So let's go on, say yes to whomever, and realize I'd rather be by myself. Going through that experience, because there was not a lot of criteria that I'd put there. And really it was, so, I even hate the word, so desperately wanting to have that partner that I just put up with anything. And that ended up being really that frying pan moment. It was not listening to my intuition, not like seeing the signs, but doing absolutely nothing about them until that point in time comes when it ends and it just drops you to your knees. So that's what I refer to as the frying pan moment, is that it hits you so hard. And that force, or that impact was really, hey, listen, you need to stop doing what you're doing, and you need to reevaluate where you go from here. So we've been giving you signs, we've been showing you all of these things, and you're not paying attention. So this time we're going to make you pay attention to it. Definitely, I look back at that saying, yes, that was an incredibly challenging moment that I had in my life. But in the grand scheme of things, it was really small. But it allowed me to get onto the path where I am right now. Had I allowed that to continue and we stayed there, I wouldn't have the life that I have right now. Right. So I'm a firm believer in blessings and lessons. People come into our life for one of the two. And this was definitely a lesson. It was a huge lesson, but then all of the blessings that I've had from it, I wouldn't change anything. I'm the kind of person who has no regrets. So, because I think they're useless, I suppose. Don't know if that's the best word to say. But they've all taught me something and allowed me to get to where I am, definitely to get to where I am today.
Right. I loved it when you made the declaration, because we all do that. I'm going to do this. And then, you're like, no, that sucked. I'm never doing that again. What was I thinking?
Why did I think this was a good idea?
Moment, like, this is it.
This is it. That's right. Yeah. And that's our ego talking to us. We're not actually paying attention. But yeah, she lies to us.
I'm just going to go home.
Yeah. Good.
I also, moving from that, I would really recommend that people dig further into your story, because really and truly, it's every woman's story, in my opinion. And, we all have that time where we have to, certainly I've had that experience where I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know who I am anymore. And you have to just sit back and figure it out. And that is tough. That's tougher than all the other stuff that was the precursor,
That just takes courage too, right? Mm-hmm. Knowing, when you're at one of your low moments, and recognizing, being self-aware enough to go, I deserve better than this. I desire to have different things that I have right now. So what are those things? And having the courage to try different things out.
Right. Yeah.
And
being okay with that failure.
Failing forward.
That was not a good idea. That declaration was not for me.
Not for me. No. But definitely failing forward. At least if you're failing, you're trying.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Yes. So you've also contributed to this book called Silent Grief, Healing and Hope. And I really appreciated this book a lot, because this is the book I wanted to read when I had a miscarriage. And I went to the library to find all these books, and I read a million of them, and I created a list for my doctor, and none of them were as personal. They were all sort of, this is physically what is happening when you're having a miscarriage. And you talk about that moment where they say, I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat. And I've had that moment, and the terror and the, you know, all the grief that comes with it. And so, well, you know, I don't want us to cry today. Tell me how these experiences, or this experience in particular, helped move you to the place you are now. And also, you know, how you relate these experiences to the people you work with.
That story was one, to be honest, I was never going to tell. There was only a few people who knew that I was expecting. And so when, you know, we had that fateful day that, you know, we went in and said that there is no heartbeat, I only had to tell a few people that this isn't working out for me right now. And so I kept it quiet, and there was the shame associated to it. What did I do? Is this my fault? You know, why did this actually happen? Until I was inspired to, you know, helping out another organization. They were doing some fundraising. I'm starting to find the word there. They were doing some fundraising for an organization, and I had just happened to write a little comment on her post, and someone from the first book reached out and said, hey, please be in my book. I'm writing about this. And I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I really want to do that. It ended up being an amazing experience, incredibly therapeutic as well. That pen to paper, that writing experience is one of the most therapeutic things that you can actually do. But going through that process, and feeling that type of a loss and that type of emotion helps you to relate to people better as well. I think that when we go through these hard times and we use them as the catalyst to become a better human being, it allows us to connect and to relate to people more. So you have that greater empathetic muscle that you've been, you know, working with, and really it just brought out that little bit more of that caring aspect of myself, that nurturing aspect, which is why people are actually drawn to me. Because I use that as I'm not what did somebody call it the other day? I don't give people that snow globe effect. Like, I don't just shake them all up, right? What I do is use that more of that nurturing, that soft transition. And instead of shaking too many things up and seeing where things land, that's not my style. Right. Works for some people, but yeah, that's one of the things that I think that, you know, the writing aspect and having all of those experiences, just bring them forward, saying, if I went through this, somebody else has gone through this, and how can I help somebody else? And it goes into my philosophy of learn, do, teach. I learn something, I do something, and then I can teach somebody else about it. And then I like for the people that I work with to do the same thing as well. Right.
Right.
So
right.
Pay it forward. Right. Yeah.
Right. Did you find that I felt like I was incredibly alone? And what I found after I started to talk about it, or actually really my mother did, everybody I knew had had a miscarriage or a pregnancy loss. Both of my grandmothers phoned me, and all of my friends had had the same experience. And I was like, holy God, how come I didn't know that? Because you feel like you're just, again, the shame, you're just steeped in grief, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And, you know, even, I even spoke with people who had experienced pregnancy loss through having an abortion, whether it was chosen or chosen for them. And, you know, what I discovered was we were all in the same boat. We were all the same, you know,
yeah.
And that really, I think, helped me put things into perspective.
I think when you talk about it, when you talk about it, you hear about it more because you're attracting that to you, and knowing that, something that you can do or say is going to help somebody else out. And it's good to know that people are not alone. I just remember walking into that clinic after I had that, from the ultrasound tech saying there is heartbeat to almost hyperventilating, right? Being in the clinic, and it was cold. Here's a piece of paper. Here's your choices. This is what you can do. And it's like, really?
Yeah.
That's it. There's nothing else. Yeah. And I think people just need to know that they're not alone, and just to be heard, to be seen. And that's another thing that, people really do want, whatever line of work that you're in, people want to be seen and heard, and they want to be cared for. The more you can do that within your role, whatever profession that you're actually in, the greater impact you will have on your team, and you're going to get so much more out of them because they want to be there. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you talk about bringing empathy with you into your leadership role. And that seems to be sort of catchphrasey right now, particularly with men. I'm noticing they're really picking up on that. And I have a lot of feelings about that. And because I think you have to have empathy to lead with it. And so what happens? I'm going to get a lot of comments about that.
Okay.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Here we go.
Yeah. How do you help your clients, particularly women? So let's focus on women in leadership.
Okay.
How do you help your clients pick themselves up or walk through the experience of, quite frankly, getting their ass kicked? Especially, say I know you have a real corporate structure, but I've been a leader where it's all men except for me, and I was top of the food chain, and they took every shot at me that they could. And what I see is missing is in leadership programs is that piece where you teach people how to be resilient and teach people, they teach a lot of process, but what they don't teach is the people part. How do you spot those kind of people? How do you work with those kind of people? How do you pick yourself up when you get knocked down? How do you teach your people that?
Again, it really comes back to the person themselves. And, sometimes we have to talk through the experience that they're currently in, and it's not about them at all, right? They may be just the subject of somebody else's frustrating day. But really it's just a matter of, let's bring it back to us. Who are we? And that's why it's so important to understand who we are, what we stand for. How do we speak our truth? How are we comfortable speaking our truth, and standing in our power? And just to, I guess it really depends on the situation that we're actually, involved with, but really it's listening, it's being there, it's understanding who we are as a person, and knowing that just because somebody else is throwing these things at you doesn't mean that it's your fault, that they're like that. It's never your fault. Somebody else's actions are never your fault, so never actually take those ones on. That's somebody else's issues to deal with. And yeah, just being courageous enough to really speak your truth and ask for what you want, or set the boundaries of what you do not want.
Right.
Bring those into your lives.
I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, and I don't mean to, but is there some sort of exercise or something, like when we're in it, or maybe when we step back and try to get some perspective, is there an exercise that we can go through or we can assess, okay, this happened, here's how I dealt with it? Is there a debrief, or do you take it apart? What do you do with your clients?
One of the exercises that I use with the people that I work with, one is when you're getting into that, I am so frustrated, there's so many things going on. I'm pulled in so many directions, is I help people bring them back to themselves. And that's a very simple exercise. You can do it out loud or in your head if you wanted. So you can be anywhere and do this. And what that involves is there's some breathing exercise with this. So what I would normally do is I'd put my hand on my heart, the other one on my stomach. And I would take 3 deep breaths, so in through my nose, out through my mouth. And then on the 4th one, what I would do is I would use my birth given name and say, come back to me. And I would do that 3 times. And then, so we're now 6 breaths in, right? And then on the 7th one, again, it's just really just a matter of doing that deep breathing. And then, go about your day again. It is incredibly relaxing. I do that sometimes several times a day, depending upon what situation that I'm currently involved in. It's like, okay, my energy has been spread out. It's in all these places. So now I'm just going to bring myself back to myself, right? Take a pause, take a moment, and then move on with the rest of my day.
And I have a lot of questions about this, but I don't want to get bogged down here.
Go for it.
I've sort of done that before, where I've had to take a minute, and the person who was being a real agitator came in for some more while I was taking a minute.
Yeah.
And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm getting myself back in my body so I don't like pull your throat out of your chest," right? So what do you do with people like me who generally, like, my default is quite aggressive? So is there a method or I've had to go through my own process to not like hit first while somebody's walking in the door, just so they know, right? So I've had, like, what do you do with people like me?
So if you tend to be more in that masculine energy, right? And this is that forceful, this is the drive to getting things done. When you want to drop back into your feminine, really just drop back into your heart space. Again, take some deep breaths and concentrate. And the reason that I like to use my hand on my heart is because that gives me an area of focus. So when my hand is here, this is actually where my focus is. And we can essentially breathe into your heart space. One visualization exercise, that's a tough one to get out, is to visualize your heart as a rose, right? And at the beginning, it's probably really closed up and tight. And as you do some breathing exercises and you're focusing, envision that flower, that rose actually opening up. It really, really helps to help you bring yourself back into more of that feminine energy, because there's times when we need one and the other. There's definitely always that balance. And the most effective leaders, I find, or people in general really, are those ones that can have that harmonious balance of where they need to be. And there's going to be that ebb and flow from one to the other. And you're going to bring out, the action oriented, have to get this done. You're going to get that done. But then you just need to make sure that you do that reverse on the other side to just really drop yourself into your heart space. And it'll help center you again there as well.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm getting coaching.
It's one of the things, it's actually one of the things, it's one of the things that I do, being in that corporate space. But I also have a very spiritual belief and mindsets as well. And so I bring all those little bits and pieces into that whole, because we're not just one or the other, we're all, right? So when we can bring all of us in to whatever our chosen thing is that we do, it's incredibly motivating, liberating, and that freedom feel that I can be me in this space, all of me in this space.
So I'd like to ask you where we can find you online, and also sort of what are your offerings?
Where you can find me online is through my website at leslierochelle.com. So LeslieRochelle.com. There is a contact form there if you wish to reach out to me. Right now, I work exclusively. I have a boutique practice, so I work with a handful of people, and I work one-on-one with them. And at this point, I have a 6-week program that we run those individuals through, and then there's a VIP coaching membership post that program as well.
And is that a 6-week program, is that for the individual, or do you do it together with other people?
It's actually the individual. So it's strictly one-on-one. I don't do anything group at this point in time because there's some things that come up that some people are definitely uncomfortable speaking about in a group. So I do like that more intimate relationship and helping people one-on-one at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining me today. Before we finish up, I would really like to know, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish that I would have? And or is there a point that we didn't hit that you feel is really important that I've completely forgotten about?
I don't think so. I think we've gone into the foundational piece of leadership really is understanding who we are as human beings. The better able we are to understand each other, the greater self-awareness we have, the better human being we become. So it's really all this, one definitely feeds the other. When we have the opportunity to be able to pass that on to people, it's a really lovely space to be in. I certainly believe that our lives deserve better leadership that comes from us as individuals. Our corporations, our governments as well need to have definitely better leaders, because a bad one can bring that toxicity to any group, which is not what anybody wants. So dare to be the best leader that you can be, but it is work to identify who you are as a human being and really what type of leader that you want to become. What's the impact that you'd like to create?
Right. Well, thank you again for joining me today.
Thank you.